All right, welcome back to Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers. I was just checking out here on YouTube, where you can find us, by the way. Just go to YouTube and type in Chatterbox Sports with Thom Brennaman, or Chatterbox Sports. Our show will come up among many other things we have going on. And we're good. Hit subscribe. It's free. So we'd love to have you with us. Steve said, I had no idea you guys were on for 5 days a week. I subscribed, hit notify. It's been a busy day at work today, even though I work from home. Alex is dialed in, and many, many other thousands are dialed in right now. So thank you. Also, you can find us wherever you get podcasts, Apple, so on and so forth. All right, we promised Tracy Jones would be with us. He looks like he's coming from a similar setting that Joe Biden made his speech the other night. It's so dark there, and I'm just looking for two Marines standing in the background. Are you in a cave of some kind doing this show today? I mean, you got all over my dad's case about his internet or lack thereof.
Listen,
you look like you're in a cave.
Listen, I was going to tell you, because I've been watching you, and I think you need encouragement because you're new at this. You're doing a great job, Thom, in case anybody's told you that or hasn't told you that. Hey, listen, do you want me to turn the lights on a little brighter?
Yeah, I mean, don't you have one of those fancy lights right in front of you where it shows your face a little bit?
Yeah, let's do this. I'll step away for a second. You people who are watching, take a look at all my memorabilia. Take a look at my 25. Where is that? 25 with the Giants. You know, I was 25 before Bonds. 1 second.
We got to ask him about some of this stuff. What do you have back there? You got the Giants uni. Do you have every jersey you wore framed? Seriously, do you?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do. 24 with the Expos, 15 with the Tigers, 25 with the Mariners, the Reds, of course, and the Giants 25. Can you believe that, Thom?
I want to ask you a serious question for a second, and then we'll move on to some nonsense. And I remember this, Tracy, like it was, and I know no one remembers this more than you. But all kidding aside, we jab you a lot, and we have fun about, you playing and coming up with those whole group of guys and hitting third in the lineup, coming up with Davis and Larkin and O'Neill and Cal Daniels and Stillwell and that whole group. But you were knocking the cover off the ball when you first came up to the Reds. You and Cal Daniels were platooning out there in left field for a while, and, I mean, you're just mashing. I think you were hitting like 330, 340, something. The injury you had in Montreal, right, where you tear up your knee.
No, it wasn't in Montreal.
Well, I thought it was Montreal. Where was it?
No, I had surgery in Montreal. And this, you start bringing up stuff like this, Thom. You know how I'm always joking around. But you bring up a topic like this in my career, and if I really focus in on my career, I get very upset and kind of depressed because, like you said, I was hitting, and I was doing pretty good. And the night that I hurt my knee, I hit my knee on the mound at Riverfront.
Yes, the bullpen mound, where the bullpens were still in play. Yes, I knew it was. Right. That's how. Okay, so go ahead. I don't mean to interrupt.
It was off the bat of Mike Schmidt. There's no reason why I should have been going for the ball. But before the game, and I was platooning with Paul O'Neill actually at the time, and Pete came up to me and said, listen, you're no longer platooning. It's your job in right field. And then I hurt myself, and I was never the same. I
never knew that story.
Yeah, and I try not to tell it because it's such a bad story, and it's tough. And I know you're probably thinking, Tracy's story is probably a lot like Mickey Mantle's story, right? How Mickey Mantle got
I was thinking more Wally Pipp.
Yes. But, that can bring you down if you start thinking about it.
Well, it can. And I know you're not kidding around when you say it. I mean, it really can because, I've met with other guys who felt like and talked to other guys who felt like their careers were right on the brink of taking off, and then an injury happens, and then Do you think that I'm curious if you've ever thought about this, not that it matters at all, but do you think with the technology today on knee surgeries, it would have been a different comeback for you than it was back then?
Man, you're asking some great questions. I had an MRI done in Cincinnati when I heard it, and the MRI came back negative. There was nothing wrong with it. So there were only, at the time, 2 MRI machines in the entire country. So after Buck Rogers, who was the manager of Montreal, said, Tracy, I'm tired of watching you limp on one leg. He says, you need to get surgery. When they operated on me, the doctor said afterwards, how in the hell did you play on that knee? He said there was a divot the size of a quarter underneath your kneecap. So I had the surgery, and you know what they told me back then, Tom? They told me that, hey, you need to take 2 months off. Instead of doing any type of rehab, take 2 months off. So needless to say, my knee just kind of locked up.
Yep.
I never had the speed that I once had. I mean, when I got hurt that night, I was second in the National League in stolen bases. And I'm not saying I was better than Paul O'Neill, because Paul O'Neill is a friend of mine, great player, just had his number retired with the Yankees. I'm not saying that, but I'm telling you what led up to that, that injury.
You were doing it. All right. I want to shift.
I'm
glad we had that conversation. I really mean this because, I mean, I've known you for a long time, but I've really never had a chance to ask you that question. All the years that you were on the radio here in Cincinnati, you never really talked about this and got into it, and you playfully have fun and all that kind of thing. But look, for you and your life, this was a very serious topic.
It was a serious topic, and I don't bring it up on the radio, and because nobody's going to feel sorry for me. You don't feel sorry. Do you feel sorry for me?
You know
Tom?
what? I do. You
do, don't you?
I really
so
do.
Your dad wouldn't feel sorry for me.
Not a chance. Not a chance. He'd have wondered
let's
why,
move.
unlike the doctor who asked you how you played with a divot in your knee, he would have asked you just like he used to ask me, why didn't you play better despite that divot in your knee?
It's tough playing in the big leagues, period. But to play it on one leg, and speed was an important part of my game. I mean, I went from being one of the fastest players in the National League to being below average, getting down to first base. And that's pretty sad.
Hey, a cat like you over the weekend, I didn't get into the whole WEBN fireworks show and all that kind of thing. I remember years and years ago, you and I were at some event by Cincinnati Bell, I think, and John Burns, where we were both watching the fireworks. But, for many, many years, you lived down there by the river. Did you hang out and watch the fireworks over the weekend, or that's not your thing?
First of all, people who watch fireworks are hillbillies. They sit there, drink Old Milwaukee, and watch fireworks. You've seen one fireworks. You've seen them all. People get excited, with sparklers. You remember those snakes you used to put on the ground? They used to make that black stain on the cement. You ever have a fireworks like that? I mean, that's what people do right below my building. Drink Old Milwaukee and watch the fireworks and go, ooh, wow. Come on. I'm better than that.
Did you just call people who watch fireworks hillbillies?
Did I say that? I'm sorry. Listen, I'll be honest with you. I did watch the fireworks, but I was drinking Grey Goose.
So you did watch them.
I kind of like fireworks a little bit. To stop the act a little bit, I actually like the fireworks, and I thought they were very good this year.
So when you have, now I'm a beer drinker, okay? I'm not a mixed drink guy. I'm not a the rage over the last few years, wine drinking and all that. If you were watching the fireworks, are you having a beer or are you one of those wine guys? Or are you like a high noon guy?
First of all, I don't drink. First of all, I only eat once a day. I fast throughout the day. I only eat one time a day, and then I have a couple of cocktails, and then I eat my dinner. I am not a beer guy. That's kind of a ham and egger thing. I drink, and I told you this, but you weren't listening to me. You remind me so much of your dad. Grey Goose. And once in a while, I'll lower the bar and have Kettle One and tonic, something like that. But, yeah, I like to keep it high end. What kind of beer do you like, Tom? You like those What do you like?
I'm not a big microbrew guy. Those are loaded with those because I can drink some beer now. I mean, I have to admit, for whatever reason, and I've practiced it a long, long time. I can really drink some beer, and so if all of a sudden, you have 4 or 5 more of those micro beers where the alcohol level is up 5.5%, 6.5%, 7%. I mean, that's not good. That's not good. So I'm a ham and egger. So we've established that in some ways, which surprises me when it comes to you, Tracy Jones, when you just made the reference to ham and egger, ham and eggers are the kind of guy and the kind of people I figured you spent most of your life with out where you grew up in California, and in many ways you relate to now in Cincinnati. But I don't know if that's true anymore.
Yeah, I really don't try to hang out with those type of working class people. I'm more of a upper, got to make well into 6 figures. Hey, do you think you might have a problem? You said you drank 5 or 6 beers. That sounds like you have a drinking problem, Thom.
I might.
It's amazing how you used to have 2, right? Then it moves 3, 4, and 5 to get the same result.
And a lot of that is based on how long you're married.
Yes.
I'm convinced
I
of that.
I hear you.
All right, I want to get to something, a couple of topics here about the sport that you love. I'm assuming you continue to love it because I got to be honest with you. I'm getting ready to do a streaming show I do every week. I've been doing it the whole season from the Pioneer League. Did you ever play in the Pioneer League?
No, I know that's low A ball, right?
Yeah, and now it's independent ball ever since they cut out 60 teams or whatever it was. And the Reds franchise was in Billings there for, I think, like 45 or 55 years. A lot of the great players in Reds history came through there. But I've been doing the show all year long about the Pioneer League. And we're doing our final show of the year tomorrow night. And everybody is asked to do a 2 or 3 minute commentary on why they love baseball. Okay. And look, you played the game. You talk about the game a lot. I had the blessing and the privilege of broadcasting it 33 years. I hope I get a chance to do it again. But, Tracy, baseball is not the same game today that you played. It's not even the same game that was played as recently as 15 years ago. Better or worse now?
Oh, I think it's worse, Thom. There is such a lack of hitting. And it gets frustrating for me to watch a game because there's so much swinging and missing. I'm going to give you some numbers, okay? Because I actually come prepared, unlike your other guests that you have, like Barkley and Billy, those guys. The Reds are hitting 242. The Reds are hitting 242 as a team. Now, you would think that would be at the bottom, but that's actually in the middle of Major League Baseball. The Oakland A's are hitting 217 with an on-base percentage of 281. There are 4 teams, only 4 teams that are hitting or that have an on-base percentage of 320. Can you believe that?
No,
and you wonder why
I really
don't
can't.
like the game. It's
I really
boring.
Can't.
You got to have more hitting. You got to have guys on base. You got to have stealing. You got to have some motion. It just can't be spin the win. And we talked about it the other day. You know, the launch angle. You ever see some of these guys? They have the same swing. I play with a guy like Kevin Mitchell. I saw Kevin Mitchell hit balls up here. I saw Kevin Mitchell pick balls up at the plate, off the ground. Barry Larkin used to do that, right? A different swing. I see some of these guys, same swing for every single pitch. It's either home run or a strikeout. And to me as a fan, I think that's boring.
Okay, look, I think you can make a very strong case that everything you just said is directly tied to analytics. And this is one of the hot button topics of baseball fans. You've got an entire generation of people that believe that analytics is like the holy grail out there, right? That all the answers are involved in analytics. And you just mentioned the Oakland Athletics. The guy who, quote unquote, made analytics famous is actually one of my favorite people I've ever been around in the game as a guy is Billy Beane. I love Billy Beane. He's a cool guy. He's a smart guy. He's a fun guy. He loves to laugh. He loves to have fun. I just really like the guy. But
he was a horrible player, by the way.
well, he might have been a horrible player, but he's a good general manager. But the point I'm making is this: is that all the people who will argue that analytics is the end all and be all, they'll point at teams like the Boston Red Sox or something. When Theo Epstein was here, and I'd say, wait a minute. I thought the idea of analytics was to find players that could do certain things very, very well, and that you could go and sign those players and scout those players and develop those players, and they wouldn't cost you a fortune, right? One day. You could go find those little, sort of diamonds in the rough everywhere, right? Every team has bought all in, and the Boston Red Sox were not one of those teams, an analytics team when you're spending $200 million a year on payroll, right? The Oakland A's are still trying it with analytics with a payroll of whatever it is, $30 million. And for them, you just gave the numbers, and it ain't working. But that's the reason you don't see any hitting anymore.
Well, I think one of the numbers that Billy Beane, and he is a great general manager, that he focuses in on, and I thought that was a big number, is the on-base percentage.
Yep.
Right? I mean, you can't score any runs if you're not getting on base. So that analytic thing is fine, and I understand that being a piece. I did a show with your dad about a week ago, saying what I would do if I was general manager. And what I would do is I'd hire the 3 best scouts in baseball. 3 best ones. I don't know who they are. There could be one from Seattle, one from the Tigers, and one from the Mariners. I don't know. But I would pay those guys top-notch price. I'd pay them the most, that you could pay. I mean, maybe $500,000, because I think scouting is the most important part. I'd have them fly first class, stay in the nicest hotels, and take care of those guys. I think a lot of time is wasted just I see scouts in the stands still to this day just sitting there with marking things down. You need those top-notch scouts. You really do. And that's what made the Reds great back in when I played. I'm not talking about, but the scouting that they had, the Larry Doty, the Larry Barton Jr. and Sr. You had Gene Bennett, who wanted to draft Jeter. Instead, Jim Bowden, old leather pants, took Chad Mottola, right? Can you imagine an infield of Jeter and Barry Larkin?
Who would have played shortstop?
Well, that would have been, and I read this the other day, that would have been Barry Larkin. They were going to move Jeter to center field, and Barry was not going to move from playing shortstop. A lot of people don't know this, but Kurt Stillwell was pretty good back then too, right?
Yes, he was.
And there was a thing going back and forth about who was going to move over and play second base. Pete wanted, and Pete might correct me on this, he wanted to move Barry Larkin to second. And Barry said, I'm not moving.
Yeah.
And Kurt says, I'll move.
Yeah.
And the rest is history.
Rest is history.
2 good shortstops, though.
2 good shortstops, and Stillwell had a nice career. Larkin, a Hall of Famer. We know all about him, his entire career with the Reds. When it comes to some of the issues of the game, and a lot because of what you just talked about, strikeouts, walks, home runs, right? That percentage has been steadily climbing fast as an end result of at-bats. Now, I understand this year maybe it's come, leveled off a little bit, but that's been doing one of these. It's up in the high 30% or low 40%. Pace of play. Look, when you got a lot of guys walking, you got a lot of striking out, you got a lot of pitches being thrown, you got a lot of pitches being taken, pace of play. Do you think Major League Baseball should and will adopt a pitch clock?
Well, let me say this, and you talk about the time of baseball game. I think it's up to 3 hours and 10 minutes when it used to be 2 hours and 30 minutes. When I was watching the fireworks, Tom, with all the hillbillies having my Grey Goose and tonic, I was also watching Godfather 1 and 2 back to back. That was 5 hours of watching TV. I never said, oh man, this is going on too long. This is too long of a movie. I enjoyed the whole Godfather 1 and Godfather 2. Now, Godfather 3 was terrible. Francis Ford Coppola's daughter was a terrible actress in that. But my point being is, you worry about time. That's what you people do. You're worrying about, oh, the game's taking too long. Do we need a pitch clock? This is something that your dad, and I won't give him credit on this because he found this in the rule book. It's rule 8.04. And here's what it says. And it's been enforced, or it hasn't been enforced, but it's been out there for years, since the beginning of baseball. Nobody on base. The pitcher has 12 seconds to deliver the ball, or it's ruled a ball by the umpire. This rule's been there. They haven't enforced it. Why? Why is that?
Because they're scared to death of the players, and they're scared to death of the players' union. That's the reason why. They don't do it. They don't do it. Do you think, all right, look, you made the argument, and unless they're going to enforce it, but let's just assume for a second they don't because they haven't, unless they make it a priority handed down from Major League Baseball that this is what we're going to do. They have pitch clocks in the minor leagues.
Yes, they do.
Do you think we're going to see a pitch clock in the big leagues?
Well, I mean, what would the pitch clock, what would the number be? Would it be 20 seconds, or would it be rule 8.04 of 12 seconds?
That's a good question.
Well, let me throw this at you because I think it's important. They actually did they looked at that rule 8.04 in Minnesota and the Royals game, and they found that the pitchers were throwing the ball within that 12 second. So they're fine, except when the hitters came around a second time. They slowed it down. And then when you get the relief pitchers in there, they really, really slow it down. Thom, you broadcast a million games, right? Do you ever notice how those first 3 innings go really fast?
Yeah.
And then the last 6 just drag on?
Yeah.
It happens. They get through the first time through the rotation, through the batting order, and then they slow it down. And that's what they found with this game in Minnesota and the Royals, that they don't start throwing pitches under 12 seconds.
Despite the fact that you clearly have painted yourself as a borderline elitist in the last 15 minutes of this program, you were always a union guy back in your playing days, okay? And I know you were, right there as part of the Players Association. God bless you. Do you think now, as you look at what's going on in baseball, and look, the numbers are starting to do one of these, right? TV ratings, attendance,
yep.
All these sorts of things. Do you think it would behoove, I know that's a big word, do you think it would behoove the Players Union to consider a salary cap?
Or revenue sharing? Is that what you're talking about?
Kind of like an NFL or an NBA or a NHL model. I don't know which of those 3 actually has the best, but you know what I'm getting at. Ultimately, yeah, you'd have to include revenue sharing as part of the sales pitch to the players to give consideration to something that they completely say not a chance. But do you think, with the state of the game being what it is now, do you think that the union should consider entertaining an idea of a salary cap?
I think it's a great idea, and they've thrown it around before in the past. I just don't know how you compete if you're like the Royals or the Reds or the Oakland A's or the Pittsburgh Pirates. It's just so tough. And what makes football great is one team could be at the bottom, and the next year, they're winning the division. I mean, it's so competitive. And let me just say something about our union. We have the greatest union ever. I'm actually taking my pension for the first time at 62. It maxes out. I've delayed it long enough. I get it at 62. And I called him up the other day and I says, listen, I don't need the money. I'm rich. I don't need it. He says, Tracy, you have to take your pension now because you're not going to get any more on the upside. So I'm taking it at 62 in case anybody was interested.
So what are you doing with all that money now between your financial planning business,
right,
being basically a landlord,
right,
thousands and thousands
slumlord
of units all over?
Slumlord.
I didn't say that. You said that.
No, I am a slumlord.
And now being a huge part of this program, which we know is a huge payday for everybody involved. What are you going to do with all that extra money from the pension?
I just count it. I just look at the check and I just put it in investments and just, when I put it in, it's still rich like that. Everything's, I'm very lucky. And all kidding aside, I'm very lucky. My wife does quite well. But she works about 14 hours a day. I keep kidding around. She probably makes $4 an hour. A working fool. I probably put in, it's tough for me because I usually wake up about 11 o'clock. It's tough to get out of bed when you're sleeping in silk pajamas. I usually just, go and have lunch. I probably put in 3 hours a week in work. And now you're going to I'm going to have to do some more work here. I did a lot of research for your show.
You know what?
Though.
I'm very impressed. And I thank you for your time. And we're going to see you again on Thursday, right?
You sure you want me back? And don't forget Rule 8.04.
Okay. Are we going to pub? I mean, do you need any pub for your financial services business, anything like that, or you just got everything on cruise control?
I've got everything on cruise control. I'm living the life of Riley.
Okay. All right, Tracy. Thank you.
See you, Tommy.
See you, buddy. Tracy Jones.